What's that kid? Shane Brown. What's that kid's name?
Shane.
All right. Shane, we on? Good. Okay, we're going to open this evening's meeting. Meeting announcement. Wendy. Notice, meeting notice.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of the time and place of this meeting to be published in the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and the notice of the meeting has been posted on the Sparta Township School District website.
Thank you. Roll call, Joanne?
Ms. Collier? Ms. Gagnon?
Present.
Ms. Lonsky?
Here.
Ms. McMichael?
Here.
Mr. Pelesci? Ms. Seelander?
Here.
Dr. Serrano?
Here.
Mr. Wood?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here. We all rise for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. We are now going to convene the closed session for legal, student matters, negotiations, among other things. Okay, a motion to go into closed session.
Motion.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Be back by 7. See you then.
Sorry, there's actually a first.
All right, I'll call back into session. Roll call, Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Here.
Ms. Gagnon?
Here.
Ms. Lonsky?
Here.
Ms. McMichael?
Here.
Mr. Pleshy?
Here.
Ms. Seelander? Dr. Serrano?
Here.
Mr. Wood?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here. Okay, we're going to start tonight with district recognition with the district's finest Teachers of the Year. I'll turn over to Dr. Beck.
Yeah, this is always one of my favorite board meetings of the year. A couple months ago, I announced at a board meeting who the Educators of the Year were, and tonight we're going to officially recognize them. So with that, I'll invite up the principals and the recipients over to the podium, and we'll go through. Whatever you want. That's fine.
You have it? We're good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Miller. I'm the principal of Alpine Elementary School. Don't forget, I got to pay you later. We have two recipients this year. Very proud of both of them. The first one is our instructional aide, our Educational Services Professional of the Year, Mr. Callum McCauley. Callum. And for my two recipients this year, Callum is a Sparta graduate, so he went through our school system, so we're very proud of him. After graduating, he went out to Sussex County Community College for child development, and he graduated with honors. We've had the benefit of working with Callum for the last 2 years. He started out as an instructional aide for our ESY summer program. Then he was a cafeteria recess aide, and he always wanted to do something more. He had something in his head that he wanted to contribute more. Now he wanted to be an instructional aide in our classrooms. And Callum, why do you want to be an aide? But the reasons why, and this is what got to me, he wants to work with children who have autism or learning difficulties. He wants to return the favor that his teachers did for him. He wants to make his teachers proud of the person he has become and to be a positive role model for his current students. He wants to make a difference in the students' lives by providing compassion and understanding. He wants to be a positive role model for the people who are on the autism spectrum, to show them that they can overcome the impossible because of his experience in his life with having a disability, so they don't have to feel alone. So when I read those, I'm like, that's why we wanted Callum to be part of our school. Every day he comes with a smile. He has a poll going through the school if we're going to have a delayed opening, no school the next day. He's always asking everyone, and he really is an inspiration. Last year, Callum was in a newspaper article because he does a lot with autism awareness. And if you see some of our teachers in our school, we have sweatshirts and T-shirts. He designed the Sparta head under the autism puzzle. So we really wanted to recognize him for doing that. And then he also wanted to kind of recognize some of his teachers that he had who came through the Sparta system, Mrs. Patricia Pracken, Pam Conlon, Conchetta Mangiacina, Gulai Mafia, Ginny Krieg, Mrs. Krieg, who is here this evening, Jane Hines, Mary Piccola, and Janet Ferraro. Those are people that he wanted to make proud. And Callum, I can say, you are doing that. The nomination quotes that people said about him, he's always giving 110% of himself. He's openly shared his life story with the school community and is an advocate for the autism awareness. He's always eager and willing to learn and grow within his job assignment. What I admire most about him is he makes it his mission to be better and do better in absolutely everything he does, whether it's helping a student navigate a challenging social situation or even just assisting a teacher with copies. In the short time that Callum has been with us, he is a huge part of what makes Alpine such a special place. So we really want to thank him, and we love having him part of our school, and I must say that Alpine is very fortunate to have him as part of our staff. So thank you very much, Callum. Callum did very well because he's a crier, so usually he cries, so he didn't, we did that. My next person is our Governor Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Kimberly Benson. Kimberly's family is here tonight. Her son Julian, her daughter Amina, and her husband, Mr. Benson. They are also in the audience, so thank you. Another Sparta graduate that comes through our system and is making a difference. She got her bachelor's degree at Montclair State in Family and Childhood Studies, early and middle school childhood. This is her third year in Sparta, but she's an experienced teacher. She's been teaching for more than 15 years. She's a passionate educator about providing a quality, inclusive education to all learners. The nomination quotes, because we got a couple nominations from Mrs. Benson. It's because of her efforts and her genuine enthusiasm for education. That comes through on a daily basis. Her enthusiasm, creativity, openness, and efficiency. She has instilled and reinforced the sometimes forgotten power of just simply being kind. Mrs. Benson is seen as her students at her students' sports practices, games, dance recitals, and cheering all of her kindergartners on. The inspiration and devotion she instills in our children will not only serve them better as individuals, but elevates the generation to come for the Sparta community. She's an asset to Sparta and Alpine, and we are lucky to have her. She makes the students feel safe to be themselves. She radiates positivity. I must say, every single day, she always has a smile on her face. She brings her 2 kids to the school, carrying them in from the car and all her bags. But she always has a smile and a kind word, and it's like, what do you need? What do you want? Her words, her students are like my family, and she loves spending her days with them. That's the people that we want working with our students on a daily basis, especially our youngest ones. We feel this is a very well-deserved honor for Mrs. Benson. She's an asset to Alpine and our students, and she's a strong advocate for children. We are thrilled to call her our colleague, and we look forward to the many years of continued teaching of our children in Sparta.
Good evening. I'm James Heinig. I'm the interim principal here at Mohawk Avenue School. I've been here for just a few weeks, actually, and I'll be interim principal here for about 20 more hours. So I do bring a very limited perspective to the table here. However, the educators that we're going to be honoring tonight have deeply impressed me, even in the short time that I've been here, and I know that the honor that they're getting is very well deserved, even from my brief experience here. Dr. Castorina is going to help me with the first honoring, which is of Mrs. Lourdes Franconeri for Education Services Professional. She's the school social worker. Despite the fact that I have had very few interactions with Lourdes, it became just abundantly evident just after a few minutes of conversation what a caring, intelligent professional she is. She's just dedicated to the social and emotional well-being of our students, and we're just very fortunate to have her counseling the students that she works with, but also having a deeper influence upon the entire Mohawk Avenue school community. So Dr. Castorina is going to add a little bit more detail to that, but I just wanted to give my 2 cents.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Castorina, and I'm the Director of the Special Services Department in the district. It's a true honor to speak about Mrs. Francaneri this evening on behalf of our department. As a school social worker on the child study team at the elementary level, Mrs. Francaneri is often found working with parents who are finding out information about their child's disability for the first time. This information can be both shocking and overwhelming. Mrs. Francaneri works with our parents in both a non-judgmental and compassionate manner. She helps calm parents' fears about their child riding a bus for the first time, walking into an unfamiliar building, or meeting new classmates. At the age of 3 years old, this can be very frightening, both for the student and for their parents. Some may associate Mrs. Francaneri with Alpine Elementary School. However, she spends significant time at Mohawk Avenue as well. Here, she serves as a child study team member, a mentor, and a consultant to her colleagues. She is called upon in all buildings when needed to assist, whether it be for a risk assessment or a threat assessment or to help cover a colleague who is out on leave. She never says no. At times, she is called upon simply for her input with a challenging situation. I can say from my own lens that Mrs. Francaneri puts students first always. I hear parents asking for her to join a meeting for a student who has been off her caseload for years. Her presence seems to help make a situation just a bit easier. Lastly, who can forget her therapy dog, Rosie? Together, they have brought smiles to our students' faces across the district. Lord, as we are so lucky to have you with us in Sparta, congratulations on this special recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Castorina, and congratulations again, Lourdes. Our Governor's Teacher of the Year for Mohawk Avenue School is Mr. Kyle Markovich, who teaches health and physical education. So Kyle also teaches at Helen Morgan, and he has a very difficult time leaving the building every day because as he walks through the halls, the kids are clamoring to talk to him, to connect with him one more time. So I commend him for just arriving on time at Helen Morgan every day. But I'll give you just a glimpse of one of those experiences when I happened to be in the hall as he was making his way out the door. So he happened to cross paths with a student, a young man who happened to have been in my office a few times for some disciplinary issues, and they high-fived, and Kyle complimented him on the excellent work he had done that morning in gym class. And it was a great reminder to me of the vital importance of what Kyle does and what all of our colleagues with Health and Phys Ed do. As much as I know that those interactions that I had with that student in my office were necessary, I know also that the kinds of experiences that that child and other children have with Mr. Markovich are the kind of really meaningful and enduring learning experiences about fairness, about respect, and about teaching, about teamwork that will really stay with them. So kudos to Kyle for that influence he has not only on their physical well-being, but on their social and emotional well-being as well. So congratulations.
Thank you. My name is Doug Lehman. I'm the principal at Helen Morgan School. Over the past year and a half, our staff at Helen Morgan School has engaged in many conversations and examined staff and student data that focus on school culture and climate. As we reflected as a staff on our strengths, we identified two major themes in establishing and maintaining a positive school culture. And they are as applicable to schools as they are in any field that requires people to work together. These themes are relationships and expectations. We need to build positive relationships with our students and between staff members. We need to have high expectations of ourselves and our students. and provide the necessary supports and motivation to reach those high expectations. I believe that our nominees this year, Nicole Petrock and Sonia Benson, truly exemplify these guiding values. In their different roles, they each have made significant and lasting contributions to our positive school culture. First, Nicole. Nicole has served in several capacities over the last 5 years. And for the past 2 years, she's been an instructional aide and works tirelessly, always with a smile, in the classroom, helping students succeed and become more confident learners. As a resident of Sparta, mother of 3, and wife of a coach, Nicole frequently volunteers at many community and school events and for many of our sports teams, including football, wrestling, and softball, for which she serves on the board. Nicole may claim to be the best baker at HMS, but I assure you that had nothing to do with her being named this year's recipient of the Educational Services Provider of the Year Award. Nicole, thank you for your service to our students and your contributions to our school culture. Thank you. If there is a teacher at HMS that most represents the best of who we are, it would be impossible not to consider Sonia Benson, also a Sparta graduate. I think I speak for our entire staff when I say that Sonia's dedication to her work, compassion for all her students, and effervescent personality has set a standard that all her colleagues seek to attain. And we are a better school for it. To quote a colleague, Sonia is an inspiration. She teaches from a place of love and focuses on building strong relationships with her students, colleagues, and community. She has an innate ability to create a learning environment that is fun, safe, and rewarding, with the goal of ensuring that each child will find success and thrive beyond their own expectations. You can't help but smile when you hear Sonia's contagious laugh in the hallways, and you will know when you hear it that today will be another good day. Congratulations, thank you to Sonia Benson, this year's recipient of the Governor of Education Award.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Jabori. I'm the building principal at Sparta Middle School. And it is my sincere pleasure to introduce to you tonight the Governor Educator of the Year Award and Educational Services Professional of the Year Award from Sparta Middle School. I'll begin with the SMS Educator of the Year, Mrs. Catherine Jennings. Mrs. Jennings currently teaches social studies to 6th grade students on the Amber team at Sparta Middle School. Last year, Mrs. Jennings joined the SMS teaching staff after teaching in the district for a number of years at the elementary level. Immediately upon joining our team, Mrs. Jennings became very comfortable with the middle school level and embraced the new assignment. Mrs. Jennings consistently demonstrates an exceptional understanding of grade-appropriate learning, employing a diverse range of teaching strategies that cater to the unique needs of each student. With this recent assignment change, Mrs. Jennings has shown versatility and dedication to her profession that has gone unmatched. Mrs. Jennings has brought a unique touch of an ELA teacher's background to the social studies classroom and has been successful in supporting her students on a multi-level platform that encourages cross-curricular experience. It is clear that Mrs. Jennings has dedicated herself to the middle school, her new subject, and to her students. Just the other day, I pulled a few students aside in the hallway and asked them, why do you think Mrs. Jennings deserved the Governor Educator of the Year Award? And the response was, she's cool, calm, and collected, and never gets distracted. So I looked a little puzzled and mentioned to the student that nobody's ever described a teacher in that manner. And the student responded, well, it's true. She always keeps us on task. Oh, and she makes social studies fun. I mean, really fun. So just to show how she does impact and has been able to go from that elementary level to the high school or to the middle school level and really still connect with the students. And to her colleagues, the quote was that Catherine is an exceptional educator whose adaptability to new challenges, expertise in teaching reading, dedication to professional development, and strong connections with students and parents makes her truly deserving of this award. At this time, I would like to introduce to you the Sparta Middle School Governor Educator of the Year to Mrs. Catherine Jennings. Next, I would like to introduce to you the Sparta Middle School Educational Services Professional of the Year, Mrs. Alexa Griffin. Mrs. Griffin has been the school nurse at Sparta Middle School for the past 2 years and a nurse in our district for several years prior to that. During her time at the middle school, Nurse Griffin demonstrated a special kindness and compassion towards our students and staff and has created meaningful relationships with students, parents, and families. Nurse Griffin always makes the medical, mental, social, and emotional well-being of our students the #1 priority and has become one of the students' greatest advocates. Nurse Griffin has shown her leadership qualities by spearheading the Project Adam initiative, making Sparta Township Public Schools the first certified heart-safe school district in the state of New Jersey, and has been asked to sit on the Project Adam New York Advisory Committee to assist other schools and communities with becoming heart-safe. Nurse Griffin's dedication and commitment to our community goes well beyond the Sparta Public Schools, as she is also an active volunteer member of the Sparta EMT and Board of Trustees. In addition, she leads training classes for our district staff in CPR, first aid and safety, and other various courses. Sparta Middle School and the Sparta School District are honored to have a medical professional such as Nurse Griffin on our team. We are excited to recognize her as this year's Sparta Middle School Educational Services Professional of the Year, Nurse Alexa Griffin.
Good evening. My name is Ed Lazara. I'm principal at the high school. Let me start by congratulating all of our recipients here tonight. And it's very encouraging to see how many are from Sparta High School or from the Sparta School District. Unfortunately, our recipients from the high school are not from Sparta High School. One's actually from Vernon, but we're not going to hold it against her. All right. Up first is our Educational Services Professional of the Year. It's Haley Anderson. As you can tell, Haley told me to hurry up. She's actually going on maternity leave tomorrow. She's our athletic trainer. She works tirelessly to ensure the health and safety of our student population. Her attention to detail and care for students is exceptional. She works collaboratively with coaches and staff, providing insight and support that is essential to the success of our student athletes. She communicates well with parents, students, and staff to ensure and optimize safety precautions. Her expertise and knowledge is vital for the health and safety of our athletes at our high school. You will usually see Haley smiling and creating a positive atmosphere around school and out at the fields of play. However, do not mistake her cheerful personality as some sort of weakness. She's all business when it comes to student safety. And she will go toe-to-toe with our toughest coaches to ensure the health of her players. I've witnessed her sprint across the field to tend to an injured player, even if that injured player is not wearing Colombian blue and is not a Sparta athlete. I've also witnessed her confiscate a player's equipment so they cannot return to the field of play. In other words, don't cross her about student safety. It is first and foremost in her mind at all times. She is knowledgeable and trusted by the student athletes and by the coaches, and we're lucky to have her at Sparta High School. Congratulations. All right, next up is our Educational Professional of the Year, Sierra Mitchell. I'm going to share what some of her colleagues had to say about her. Sierra is very well respected in the world language department and the school community. She is very down to earth and extremely positive. She's always thinking of others first, whether it's the new student in the school who came from a different country or a student or colleague who might have had a rough day. Sierra will spread positivity and is always willing to help out. She is a true leader in our high school. Sierra is extremely knowledgeable on both second language acquisition strategies and has served as a leader amongst her peers, providing guidance in our department, determining and developing SGOs, PDPs, and use of the American Council of Teaching Foreign Language, the ACTFL-based rubrics for determining benchmarks and providing department members with leadership in assessing the implementation of technology towards data-driven student growth. Outside of the classroom, Sierra takes an active part in student life, serving as our cross-country coach at the high school. She's always in a good mood. Her colleagues and students love being around her. She can also be seen handing out homemade cookies to the staff around the holiday time. And we are truly lucky to have her at Sparta High School as well. Congratulations.
We can just get one more round of applause for all the educators here tonight. I just want to make a motion. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break for everyone to regroup and whatever pictures you need to take with your family outside before. Quick 5 minutes.
5 minutes is 5 minutes, isn't it?
4 minutes and 59 seconds.
It could be second in a long 3.
So I'm skipping this. I'm going to let him talk.
Why? Because I got to go.
Yeah. Parker.
Yo, it's freaking hot, man.
Ms. Collier,
Here.
Ms. Gagnon,
Here.
Ms. Lonsky,
Here.
Ms. McMichael,
Here.
Mr. Morris,
Here.
Mr. Pelesci,
Here.
Ms. Seelander,
Here.
Dr. Serrano,
Here.
Mr. Wood.
Here.
Okay, moving forward, we're just going to skip presentations at this time. We're going to go to the student representative report. So they have to step out. Parker?
So first and foremost, I would like to start by saying if we get a little congratulations to Sarah on passing her EMT test and becoming EMT certified. All right, so now down to the business. First things first, we unfortunately had to cancel our student council fashion show, but we are working on alternatives, coming up with new ideas such as a talent show and other fundraisers. Secondly, we are in the works of creating a field day for our seniors at the end of the year, kind of bringing back a little childhood for us, bringing back something that we all enjoyed doing as a kid. Next, I would also like to talk about some school events that are happening. First things first, the DECA Club is having an annual volleyball night where friends will come together, make teams, compete against each other for prizes, and most importantly, for bragging rights. And lastly, the play is coming up next weekend, March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Dates and times can be looked at on the SHS Musical Instagram. You can also buy tickets off the link that is in the bio of the Instagram. Tickets can also be bought in person. The times for the 1st and the 2nd are going to be at 7 p.m. and for the 3rd is going to be on 2 p.m. on the Sunday.
And then all of the schools in the district will also be collecting food for the Sparta Community Food Pantry starting this Monday through March 8th. Bins will be placed at the front offices of each school, and a flyer will be going out about that soon.
Thank you. All right. If you have, do you want to leave now? Or? Yeah. All right, going back to presentations, Mrs. Rossi will be introducing the St. Elizabeth presentation, and there are two representatives here this evening. Make it quick.
All right, we're on. So I just want to thank our St. Elizabeth representatives who are going to introduce themselves in a minute and just share a little bit about where we are in our 3-year partnership in an effort to ensure that all aspects of our school system, our academics, our social emotional supports, and our school culture and climate are areas of focus and improvement for us. And so they'll tell us a little bit about our current process and again, where we are in that and where we're headed. So thank you so much. If you don't mind. Yeah, thank you for being here.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And what a great Board of Ed meeting to attend. I mean, that's one way to spend a Thursday evening. And congratulations to all those teachers and wonderful principals and students. So, yeah, we feel very grateful to be here tonight. So, yes, we are going to talk to you, probably take about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and then please, questions. We'd welcome questions as well. We've met some of you before. We were here, I think about 18 months ago, possibly 2 years, as we were starting our formal partnership. So some of this you might be a little familiar, others it will be new. So we're going to try to just provide an overview. So first of all, who we are. I'm Elizabeth Hanson-Warner, Liz. I'm co-founder and co-director with Trish of the School Culture and Climate Initiative. We're based, as you've heard, at the Center for Human and Social Development at St. Elizabeth University. We've been doing this together for about 13, 14 years, supporting schools through the center. Trish, as you can see, wears a lot of different hats. In addition to being a professor of psychology, she's dean of the College of Professional Studies. And in addition, we also wear a number of other hats, which is I'm president of SEL4NJ, and Trish is also involved very closely with that organization and is also the co-director of an online academy for social emotional learning in schools that she co-directs with Dr. Marie Elias from Rutgers. So Trish is a busy person. We have been working in the district. We're going to be learning a bit about how we have been working in the district, but we have consultants, real-life humans, that are matched with each one of the schools in the district, and they are having the most marvelous time. And these are their names, and in fact, tomorrow morning, I believe we're going to be right here in the same building with all of our consultants, with all the principals and the key people from each of the schools having a district meeting. So we're really looking forward to that. So that's kind of who the people are who are working with the teams in the schools. And this is kind of some of the things we do. Sometimes it helps to know a little bit of context about us. As mentioned, we've been supporting schools for about 13 years. In addition to this 3-year intentional school climate improvement process, we also offer professional development and SEL coaching. We do a lot of professional learning communities to connect educators. And also we have a lab, which you may well have heard about, a climate survey that the schools have taken. So that's where that is handled out of. So yeah. So also, just so you know, we have been recognized nationally, locally, nationally, regionally. We've been doing this for quite a while. We feel, really blessed to have been recognized for the work. And I think we have to give a shout out to Dr. Maurice Elias. He's at Rutgers. He's one of the great leaders in social emotional learning and school climate. He was one of the founders of the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, CASEL. So we're very fortunate that he's right here in New Jersey, and we're very fortunate that he's an incredibly close colleague, friend, and mentor. So I think we all have benefited enormously from his work in New Jersey. So today, in just a couple of minutes, we're going to just share with you kind of why this work is important. Just a few quick bullet points as to why a focus on social emotional learning and school climate is important. And just listening to the principals talk about their work, they are walking the talk, you can tell. But we just thought we'd give a quick overview, as well as talking about what's actually going on in the schools, and then talking about what's coming next, which there's some kind of exciting next steps. So we always think it's important to step back and take a look at the big picture. And overall, what are we trying to do, as educators, as parents, as responsible members of a community? We want to create environments where our kids can thrive. And what does that feel like? What does that look like? That's kind of like where we come in, is to help make that happen. And we just love this quote from Frederick Douglass, which something very odd happened to it. It's hieroglyphics. It's actually the loveliest quote. Is that it's much better to raise strong children than to repair broken adults. And he wrote that in 1865. And that is just so true. And so much of this work that we're talking about now is tier 1 prevention. It's kind of the vaccine, it's what protects and provides that strong foundation. So it's just as Frederick Douglass was talking about. That is really weird. So another thing that is just fundamental that we just have to keep in mind is, in order to learn, students have to feel emotionally and physically safe. And I think as adults, we've all been in those moments where things are really stressed and you just can't remember anything, right? It's the same for kids. So overall, how do we create that environment? It's really just that simple. And again, a focus on climate, wow, we all have gone through a global pandemic. On top of that, there's always been, we live in a complicated world. It's not gotten less complicated. So this is a wonderful opportunity now to refocus, regroup, and have a structured way of engaging student and staff voice. And that's a lot of what this process does. It's not a program, it's a process. And also understanding what makes the schools in Sparta so strong. What are those strengths, and what makes those strengths strengths? As well as what are the opportunities to be even better? We are all continuous improvement models, and so that's kind of what this is all about as well. And we always mention this because, there's a whole lot of focus on social emotional skills. There's a whole lot of focus, especially in New Jersey, on school climate, because it's mandated that schools assess and address their school climate as part of the anti-bullying legislation. So how do these things interact? It's the social emotional skills of those humans in a school community that create the positive climate where teaching and learning can really thrive and happen. And what's, we talk about climate, it's how a place feels. You walk in, wow, this room felt great, walking in, seeing, wonderful teachers and their families. And, and climate can change very quickly. Culture is kind of like who you are and what are your traditions and what's important to the school. So that's kind of the interaction between school climate and social emotional skills. They're absolutely interrelated. And of course, trauma-informed practices, it's always good to take a trauma-informed approach to everything. It just is. And diversity, equity, inclusion, the whole idea is to, that's a huge topic that there's a whole lot of layers to. But at the end of the day, one of the real goals is that everyone within a school community feels safe and respected and has a feeling of friendship, belonging, and connection. So all of this is really all wrapped up into the same thing. And Trish, going to turn it over to Trish quickly for this bit.
Thanks, Liz. So again, congratulations to all the teachers and staff who were recognized. It was just such a pleasure to be sitting here witnessing that, and we really do feel blessed to have shared that experience with the community. So we just wanted to anchor what we're talking about when we're talking about social emotional well-being with the skills that represent really preparing kids for a life of success. Preparing students for careers, preparing students for careers that don't even exist now. So this is a model of how many people are thinking about what these skills are. There's lots of different words out there that people use to talk about these life skills or soft skills, but this is the model that we do use. And you see when you look at those boxes that each of these main core skills are broken out into sub-skills. And I think if you look at them, it would be hard to imagine that we wouldn't want our children to develop those skills. So what we're doing with working with the district is supporting the work that's happening already and infusing a focus on helping students and staff to develop and to use these strong skills. And as Liz said, the interrelationship of climate with helping students to develop these skills is undeniable. So it's wonderful to come into the district to see what the district is doing with regard to infusing social emotional learning and to help provide a climate that supports that as well. So this is the collection of the reasons why, right? This is our why that we think about every day. There's decades of research showing that if you do what we just talked about, these are the kinds of impacts that you get. And in particular, I just want to call out academic achievement, because it's also been said and found that there really isn't any other single variable that works like intentionally incorporating social emotional skills as outcomes in learning that SEL does in terms of impact on academic achievement. So it really is the place that success rests on. So it's not just students. Teachers, it turns out, and there's been some challenges with regard to teacher retention, certainly since the pandemic and after the pandemic. It does turn out from research looking at teachers that the more the teachers have these kinds of social emotional skills, the more likely it is that they'll stay in the classroom, and the more likely they are to be successful in the classroom for all of these reasons that make sense. Because as we know, learning requires relationships, right? And one of the principals talked about relationships and expectations. So teachers who have these really strong skills tend to be able to deal with the stress of being a teacher and being an educator today. And we get the benefit of teachers staying in the classroom longer. So I'm going to turn it back to Liz.
Yeah, and we are going to continue to move probably a little bit more quickly because we don't want to be here to keep you here all night. But this is a model that we use, and again, this is just showing that this is not a siloed approach to supporting schools. We know all of these components play a role, and that having a data-driven approach is incredibly important to have professional learning communities to continue to learn. And I think you'll see in the next slide, we've talked about social emotional skills, positive school culture and climate, and student and staff health. The organized and unjumbled schoolhouse is, oh, I don't know what.
It's next.
Oh, there.
You can come back to that later.
I can come back to it later. But in any case, we have a diagram that really shows the importance of having an unjumbled schoolhouse. But here in Sparta, we're taking a school-led district-wide approach for these reasons. And those people that you saw who are working with the schools, they're helping the schools do these things, to have ownership of the process, to move the work forward within the schools. Trish and I have been working at the district level, kind of supporting the district to make sure that, there's communication that's happening, that we're all on the same page, that the work is moving forward. So it's really important that, the magic happens at the school level, but wow, especially in Sparta, because the kids move so quickly and through schools, there really needs to be coordination and alignment. So it's very much a school-led district-wide approach. And so what are the big goals of this? We're not the people with the answers. We're the people with the questions that help the schools build capacity within their school to continually have an intentional focus on improving school climate. So that's what we do. And then there's these really important school climate indicators. At the bottom of this screen, it's hard to see, but we have some examples. Things like for staff morale, professional interaction, discipline, effective discipline. For students, really important things like student connectedness, student voice, respect, Frenchman belonging, utility of learning, all sorts of other things. Research shows these are directly linked to achievement, academic achievement, and emotional well-being. Really important. So we are very data-driven. After 3 years, we hope to see these, kind of bump up. And also, as mentioned before, engaged, structured, constructive student and staff voice. Again, the big ideas is we want a place where everyone feels valued and respected. And then consistent messaging and alignment we talked about. Oh, there's the slide. Right, you can see the top slide is kind of a jumbled up schoolhouse. I mean, in short, it's sort of, like in schools, like every school has this tendency that great stuff goes into the school over many years with great intention, whether they're programs or curriculums or whatever, but hardly anything ever comes out. And so it's really important that whatever's in the school is really organized, that it's meeting the needs of the school today. Not 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but today. So part of this process helps schools unjumble their schoolhouse so that there's a really good infrastructure to make sure that all of the wonderful evidence-based programs that might be being delivered in the school have the greatest efficacy. Because implementation science is really important. To get those promised evidence-based outcomes, you have to implement whatever you're implementing with 95% fidelity, and that's hard to do in a jumbled schoolhouse. So again, we're kind of the process to help schools do that. And then this is just another visual as to what we've been doing with the schools in Sparta. It's just been a joy to work with the schools, and we hear from our team all the time with what's going on. But first, to kind of understand, what kind of school do you want to be? What's your vision? What are your values? What's important to that school community? And there's intrinsic, there's extrinsic, the things you say, but the things that you feel. Is helping schools work through that. Collect data, figure out, well, what do you need? Compare it to what do you have? And then to ensure sustainability. So, and this work has been going really nicely in all of the schools. And I think what's really important to note is that it's not a race, and every single school is going to be working at a different timetable and will be focusing on different things. And that's how it should be. And some of the things at first glance might seem quite small. They're not. Small things are important things. Other schools might be working on something that seems at first glance to be bigger, and that's fine. But it's really important to respect the timetable of each school, what the school is focusing on, because there's been lots of discussion amongst that school team as to what they're focusing and why they're doing it. So we're really excited about this meeting tomorrow where the schools will be sharing that. So do you want to talk about the data review?
So there's a lot of words on there that people can read. It's a lot of information about the climate survey that we use. And we have administered the survey throughout all of the schools. We have staff responses, we have student responses, and we are also here to give you a heads up that we will also be encouraging parent voice. So there will be a parent climate survey coming your way, and we would really love parents to complete the survey, each survey for each building that you have children in. And the data that we've been getting back from the schools have been culled into strengths and opportunities, and the teams that we'll talk about in a second have been working toward action plans to figure out why strengths are the strengths and figure out how to improve those that are bubbling up as opportunities for improvement. So for example, I'll just give you a couple because we really want parent voice here too. So we want you to have sort of a pure mind when you're looking at those surveys. But there's been a lot of positives coming from the students across the buildings. For example, the students feel a very strong sense of friendship and belonging that actually even gets stronger from middle school to the high school level, which is really great. The students are reporting that they feel supported by staff, which is really good. But there's also indicators that students are looking for greater voice to be able to help shape their school and their environment. So we're going to really want you to sort of spread the word, parents who are in the audience here or who are listening. It's really critically important to us to have all key stakeholder voices, and that certainly includes you all. So I guess, oh, there we go. So, got it. Thanks. So this is really quickly kind of an overview of a year one focus in the schools, the year two focus in the schools, and year three. I'm not going to read through these, but this gives you a sense of what's been accomplished to date or is ongoing to date. And perhaps if you'd like, we can give you some examples of the steps that are being taken in some of the schools. Year two, generally there's a identification of a really big overarching project that can be handled by the infrastructure that we've created, which is a staff climate team that's required by the state, but that's also enhanced and enlarged in all of the buildings, as well as a student climate team. And the student climate teams are doing fabulous work. And then in year three, we do come back and do follow-up data collection, and we provide an analysis of baseline post for all the data that we've collected so that we can look at with the teams what has been accomplished in terms of impact. But we also want to set the schools up for moving forward as we leave. And we're also available to schools to continue to support them in ways that, that we need. But these are some of the really critical things that we want to make sure are in place when we come to the end of that three-year process. So to date, here are some things about what schools have been doing. As Liz mentioned, we're having this great meeting tomorrow where we're going to have the teams in each school share with one another. We really are very focused on coordination and also sharing across the buildings. And we are seeing some similarities in the responses that we're getting from the staff and the students. And this is an opportunity for the staff teams and the leaders to hear those and to help and share ideas. So next steps, tomorrow we talked about, but the administration of the Parent Climate Survey. So again, please, 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 if you receive a message from the school with a link to the survey is completely anonymous, and we ask that one person, one parent, answer the survey for each building that your school, that your child is in. And it's no worries if two people feel the need to. It's not about that. It's really about getting as much voice as possible. So we are not, strict, harsh people, but we really do want engagement. And then we are also engaging with the Culture and Climate team, or committee that was formed a while ago. Liz and I actually worked with the C3 team a couple of years ago, and helping to engage people who are interested in participating in C3 in the next steps with regard to what we get back from the parents and how to think about and how to use strategically the information that we're getting from the parent surveys. So you see these are the next steps again, and I think we'll leave it with this slide about just some ideas of what we've found from our experience, which are some important things that set up a school or a district to succeed. So we can talk a lot.
And we do love this visual, is that you can see the person at the bottom where the rung is so high. And, there's small steps. We start small intentionally, and we want whatever the schools do to be achievable, and it builds to something bigger. So that latter image is quite important to kind of internalize. So
Any questions?
Yeah, questions.
Yes.
A former, or I should say, still current member of C3. So I'm curious.
All right.
The data. I know that we're obviously going to wait until we have the parent results. Is that something that you will be sharing with the public, or at least the Board of Education?
Oh, yes, both. So we provide overview of all of the data once we have it together, certainly here back at the board. But we are also engaging with an interested group from C3 to help us brainstorm about those next steps for how to engage, how to share with the parent community. And really, very importantly, having a structure in place so that we can actually use the data with the help of this group from C3. So thank you, and thank you so much for being interested in being on C3.
I have a question. I have a couple questions. Thank you so much for coming and
there you
doing
are.
this very in-depth presentation. But so this is year 3 of the program, right? This is year 2?
Year 2.
Okay. So the beginnings phase has been collecting a lot of data.
Correct.
Right. And I guess I just wondered, you have teams at each school, and if you can just share a little bit about what that behind the scenes looks like. Like, what do you meet? Do you have calls? Do you have activities, workshops?
So it's bottom up and top down, which is how we work with schools in a district-wide approach. So Liz and I meet about every other week with Tara to give her updates about what's happening inside the schools and also hear from her. And then inside each school building, there's a staff climate team. They generally meet monthly, and our consultant is there for each of those meetings to help facilitate those meetings. There's an onboarding process for those teams that our consultants engage with. Then when it's, that the fundamental sort of first steps of forming the team and meeting the consultant and doing some of those earlier exercises, we come in after doing the survey and share the data, an in-depth 2-hour data review and conversation with each staff climate team about their school.
Okay.
And then from there, we've brought some data to Tara, and as we said, tomorrow we're going to be having people share some highlights from what they have found. I'm not sure if that answers your question or if you're asking something more specific.
Yeah, I'll just add, after the data review that Trish leads and we're there, the team and during this 2-hour process kind of extracts strengths and opportunities, like a handful of each that kind of pop up. And usually it's those strengths and opportunities that form the kind of the nexus of the school improvement action plans.
Okay.
And so sometimes they're very small. Like usually the very first action is, how are we going to share this with the rest of the staff and get some feedback? Or if there's something that came out of the data that everyone's like scratching their heads with, like, maybe we need to find out more about this. The next step may be, well, let's go talk to the aides and find out what they think or something like that. And then the work kind of continues on these sort of, 6-8 weekish like to-do lists that are meant to be achievable, that move the work forward based on what the data says.
Okay. And then I just wondered if you've done this work in other schools,
Yes.
districts before. Obviously, you have a lot of experience. So will all of this data collection and review and work that's done team, school to school, result in, I wondered if you could share some examples of like what actual actions come out of it? Like, we decided that this is a big problem. How we're going to address it in this way, like with assemblies or events or activities. Like, what are the actual
like things they add.
results?
No, that's a great question.
What do they look like, kind of?
Yeah, well, for instance, schools will focus on something that is bubbling up for them. So sometimes it's discipline policy, an effective discipline. So the team might spend some time talking about that. Sort of like, do we all agree on the discipline policy? Maybe we need to understand it more. Is it really in line with our core values? Is it being implemented, sort of regularly and consistently. So that might, that kind of focus might eventually turn into some professional development for staff around discipline, possibly a new discipline approach. The process will take it other places. Other things we've seen is sometimes staff morale is an issue. And so some schools have just started, there's one school you worked with, they started this newsletter where everyone contributed to it. And actually the team who did it thought, oh, nobody is going to have time to contribute to this newsletter. Well, they did. And they have jokes, they have polls, they have games, someone's writing poetry, and everyone just loves it. So it could be something as, quite serious as a discipline policy, something like that for the staff. And the kids come up with wonderful ideas of impacting their school more positively. I know we're thrilled. You may have just seen a mention of something called International SEL Day. Well, the kids from Sparta Middle School are being interviewed for a workshop that we're doing for SEL Day, which is March 8th, and talking about the work they're doing in terms of engaging other kids around the work of kind of addressing the positive school climate.
That was another question, the last question,
Yeah,
was
no, it's fine.
if, I know that there's a parent survey, there's the staff survey, there's, and maybe you mentioned the student survey. I know there's obviously, we've preschooled to high schoolers, but are there opportunities for students to weave in their experiences directly to the team?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the first steps with the student climate team is for the consultant and whoever's going to be sort of the advisor of that team sharing highlights of the students' responses.
So there's a
to the
student climate team
Yes.
also,
Yes.
and
a staff climate
okay.
team.
And do they ever?
They've all done the survey, including even, we have a little one.
For
the
K to
little
twos.
K to twos even. It's thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up.
Yeah, it's very cute. But I think I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the students. So the students get a very high level summary of what the students said about the climate of the school, and that is also a long conversation where then students are asked, why do you think that students in these grades feel like there's more staff support than these grades? Or why do you think there's students who said that student respect could be better? What's happening? And they have very little filter.
And will they have an opportunity as phase 3 rolls out to inform some of those actionable
They
things?
do their own. They do their own
plan. Okay,
yeah,
that's great.
They do their own.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No,
it's very helpful.
The student team is incredibly important because one of the real drivers for a positive school climate is student voice
experience.
and student engagement. Right. And so getting those students involved, and then, if you have greater student engagement, you feel more pride in your school. You do better. You feel more connected. All of
Disruptive
those things
behavior goes down.
That's
100%
yeah.
what you see.
And those student teams, it's tricky putting together the team, but we all know that there's lots of kids that, just raise their hand and are joiners, which is wonderful. But there's a lot of kids sometimes who aren't. And so this climate team is intended to have space for everyone, very intentionally, because some of those kids that are quieter, who might not be the first ones to join everything, have so much to offer. And they also represent their friends and all sorts of other people. And so we're very intentional in terms of making sure that this team is really well represented of the school. And the kids just do the coolest stuff. They really do.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? We love talking about this stuff, if you haven't noticed.
One more question. You mentioned, I love the idea of the student engagement and the idea of a building-based approach with the 5 schools we have. But something that comes to mind is we're approaching a referendum and we're really trying to focus on what is the Sparta brand? Like who are we as a culture of schools, and why now? Showing our community the value we have in our education, all of our strengths. I mean, we have to go big or go home. We have one chance to get it right? To get to make it work for our students and staff, with the different building space. And so I'd love to hear about how do we bring it together to make sure it's all fitting also within our core values, like that we're not becoming 5 desperate systems.
That's exactly, yes, that's a great question. And that is actually one of the goals and one of the reasons for working district-wide in order to help align the core values in the school with the core values of the district, to align the core values with the policies and how the policies are implemented inside the school buildings and throughout the district. And each of these teams has done some work on core values. And the middle school team, I think, no? Be another district. The students also have contributed to adding different or more core values to the core values of the school. So it's really been a way of sort of resuscitating and bringing to life again or renewal of the core values. So it will be really something for us to kind of keep top of mind, especially tomorrow when we start bringing all the teams together. But that has been our lens, particularly with our every other week meeting and our from time to time meeting with the school leadership team, to bring to your table what we're seeing across the district and where there's sort of misalignment. An interesting thing, an exercise to do, is to look at all of the places where there are behavior guidelines or behavior expectations for students. There's a lot of them, you know, on the field, at a meeting, in the classroom, in the hallway, from one school to the next school. So those are the kinds of efficiencies we try to help with the district. So it's wonderful timing, and you know we can talk a lot more through our meetings with Tara about you know bringing these two things together, what that referendum requires and what we're doing inside the schools. But that's really the purpose. And in Sparta, I mean, kids are moving all the time, right? So, you know, we've been in districts before where in one building kids get rewarded with gum for getting good grades on an exam, and the next building they're not allowed to chew gum. So, I mean, that's a silly example, but that really is throwing the kids off, right? It would be better for there to be a cultural consistency, and culture is driven by core values.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of our consultants who's working with the school here in Sparta, she gave a presentation to our school support network last week. There were about 100 people on, and she talked about, as Trish mentioned, behavioral expectations, and kind of sparsing it out, is that she ended up with about 80 words that were all lovely, kind, respectful, you know, it went on and on and on. And yet there was just so many, whether it was from the district level, the school level, as Trish said, the sports field, is that they kind of got lost in the sauce. And so, you know, if a school/district could extract like 3 or 4 of those that really meant something, and if those were like very clearly shared as to how these are enacted and brought to life in meetings, in the hallways, on the bus, in interactions with parents, with everything, then those would probably have greater impact. And so that's, you know, a really good example of kind of some of this that will happen. Also, we work with districts. I'll get phone calls from districts who are working about to undertake like a profile of a graduate project, and they'll say, well, we can't really do this without talking about our core values. And we can't do this in isolation to the social emotional learning work, the climate work, the other work that's going on. So because we're not a program, we're really provide a process to bring this all together. And it is fluid too. So sometimes our answers are kind of like, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, because we're really driven by every unique school and district.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very
Wonderful.
much.
Thank you.
Yes. We're going to move on with our last presentation. It's the yearly ethics presentation by Mr. Zinnemer.
Just take one of those.
Yeah. It's for you.
Okay, cool. Good evening, everybody. Members of the board, members of the community, members of the administration. I'm going to talk this evening about the New Jersey School Ethics Act. The Ethics Act is a law in the state of New Jersey that governs, I'll say, the ethical do's and don'ts for Board of Education members, school officials, and I'll talk in a second about how the School Ethics Act defines school officials. So I always think that the preamble to the School Ethics Act is a really good place to start. And what our legislature has said is that in our representative form of government, it's essential that members of local boards of education and local administrators hold the respect and the confidence of the people. The officials must avoid conduct which is in violation of the public trust or which creates some justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. What does that mean? You obviously have to avoid conflicts of interest, and we'll talk about that in a second. And you also have to avoid what I like to refer to as the appearance of impropriety. And I always advise board members that you should always err on the side of caution. If somebody's going to reasonably question whether you're acting in a manner for your own personal interest or your own family members' interests, or a business that you're associated with, rather than the interest of the school district, you need to step back, you need to recuse yourself. You shouldn't vote on those matters because the public needs to have confidence that you're acting for the community at large and for the kids. So who does the act apply to? The act, of course, applies to Board of Education members. It also applies to officials from the New Jersey School Boards Association, as well as school administrators. The Code of Ethics within the Act only applies to the Board of Education members. So you've got Section 1, and I've handed it out to everybody this evening. You've got the prohibited acts. Those deal with the conflicts of interest. Things like board members shouldn't act in a manner where they have a direct or indirect personal or financial involvement that may be seen to compromise their objectivity. And then Section 2 is the Code of Ethics. And let's walk through the Code of Ethics provisions briefly. So Section A says you're supposed to uphold and enforce all laws, rules, regulations of the State Board of Education, as well as any court orders pertaining to the schools. Essentially means you have to follow the law. Section B, you make educational decisions in terms of all of the children. You're here for everybody, not just one particular group of students, regardless of race, creed, color, sex, social standing, etc. Section C, this really defines what a Board of Education member's role is. You are a policy-making body. So setting policy, planning for the future of the district, and appraisal, taking a step back and saying, how are we doing? We set goals for the board. We set goals for the district. That's all part of the board's policy-making function. And then it talks about doing those things after the board has consulted with them. So as you know, with our policies, they always require 2 readings, which means that the public always has a right to weigh in and give their input on the various policies that we're proposing. So that's how the board consults with those who are affected by them. And also you have the ability to consult with those who are affected by them through the work on your various committees. Section D is an area sometimes where board members get themselves in trouble, finding where their lane is and where the lane of the administration is. Board members are not administrators. You hired an excellent administrative team here in Sparta. They're the folks responsible for the day-to-day operations of the school districts. Board members don't run the district. They make sure that the district is well run. You have to recognize your authority rests with the board and not make personal promises or take private action that can compromise the board. You have the authority to act when you're sitting at the dais through your work on the various committees. But once you leave this room, you certainly don't have the ability to bind the board. You shouldn't be doing your own investigations into issues. And we'll talk about how to handle complaints in a second. So Section F says you're supposed to refuse to surrender your independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups or use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. Does that mean you can't advocate on behalf of a particular group? No, that's not what that means at all. The key words in that sentence are refusing to surrender your independent judgment. So you need to be fair, you need to be deliberative in your issues and in the matters that you deal with regarding the Board of Education. Section G is an area that I preach quite a bit, as you know, and that's the issue of confidentiality. Board members come across a lot of confidential information in their capacity as board members. We're allowed by law to go into executive session, discuss matters of personnel, student matters, attorney-client privilege, litigation, and so forth. Board members have to hold those matters confidential. Otherwise, it completely undermines the board's ability to be effective. And I always remind board members that your friends are not subject to the Code of Ethics, and your family members aren't subject to the Code of Ethics. So by telling one person and telling them not to tell anybody, that is a serious breach, because if it gets out and the reason for it getting out is you, that would clearly be a violation of this code provision. And then the rest of Section G requires you to provide accurate information. And we're going to talk about the free speech rights of board members. And you have a right to talk about board issues in the community at large, but it's important that you provide accurate information. So you can't, for instance, say, I'm voting no to the budget this year because Sparta is adding 5 new administrative positions, if in fact the board is adding only 3 administrative positions. So it's important that you speak accurately when you speak about board issues. Next, Section H, you will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel after consulting the recommendation of the chief school administrator. By law, only the superintendent can recommend staff for appointment to the school district community. So a Board of Education couldn't make a motion to appoint somebody, to transfer somebody, to terminate somebody without Dr. Beck's recommendation. That is New Jersey law. Does that mean the board has to be a rubber stamp? No, you have a right to ask good questions. You have a right to see the resumes of the candidates who applied. But there's another section of New Jersey law that says you should not withhold your approval of the superintendent's recommendations for arbitrary and capricious reasons. So in other words, you should generally support the superintendent's recommendation and withhold that approval only if you have a really good, tangible reason for not supporting that recommendation. Section I, supporting and protecting school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. This means we shouldn't publicly evaluate our staff. The code goes on to talk about what would somebody have to show if they were going to show there was a violation of this provision. They'd have to show that a board member undermined, opposed, compromised, or somehow harmed school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Section J, I happen to like this provision a lot. This says that if a board member is in receipt of a complaint, whatever it is about the school district, sorry, I skipped ahead there. I don't know what happened. And now I can't go back. Now I'm frozen altogether. What it says is if a board member is in receipt of a complaint, they have to refer that complaint to the chief school administrator, and they should only act on that complaint after the failure of an administrative, it's not moving, yeah, only after the failure of an administrative solution. So this is the section that where you're at the local ShopRite and a parent comes up to you and complains that their child's teacher is giving too much homework and they know that you're a member of the Board of Education and they want you to solve the problem. The correct response is, I'm going to refer that to Dr. Beck. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with saying to a parent, for instance, have you followed the chain of command? Did you speak to your child's teacher? Did you go to the principal? And so on and so forth. It really is not up to the Board of Education member to deal with that complaint on his or her own. Thank you. So who can file a complaint? Anybody can file a complaint if somebody believes that the Code of Ethics or the Prohibited Acts section has been violated. Is there a statute of limitations by which you have to file this complaint? Does anybody know? Is there a time period by which you have to file it? What do you think? 6 months. You have a 6-month statute of limitations. After 6 months, the time has lapsed. The School Ethics Commission, part of the Department of Ed, is the only entity that can determine whether somebody's conduct violated the Code of Ethics or the code or the Ethics Act itself. I've read most of the decisions from the School Ethics Commission, and you can certainly ask me my opinion. I can weigh in, but at the end of the day, the School Ethics Commission is really the one that's going to be responsible for adjudicating those issues and making a decision. Something's going on here with this keyboard. You can request an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission. So if there's ever a question about whether a proposed course of conduct is proper, not looking backwards, but looking forward, you can write to the School Ethics Commission and ask their opinion. They will give you a written letter telling you you can do it or you can't do it. You can actually even request an advisory opinion about the conduct of somebody else. The only caveat is that you have to copy that other person so that they can be given an opportunity to respond. I've had to go to the School Ethics Commission a few times before. One just quick story that stands out. I represent a school district where a high school senior got on the Board of Education. They were elected to the board their senior year. And the board turned to me and said, Mark, can this person vote on their teachers? Can they vote on their fellow students? And I scratched my head and I said, this is a really good opportunity to write to the School Ethics Commission and get them to weigh in because it was a complicated issue. And they wrote us a very nice opinion kind of telling us all of the do's and don'ts. So we can do that if we need to. What are the sanctions for violating the act? At the lightest end of the spectrum is a reprimand. It's a letter from the School Ethics Commission saying that shame on you, you violated the code or the Ethics Act. You need to be more careful next time. Next up on the scale is a censure. That's a resolution, a detailed resolution that's read publicly at a meeting admonishing the board member. It's obviously very embarrassing. We have to post the censure resolution in the place where we normally post notices and so forth. Suspension from the board, pretty obvious as to what that is. And then lastly, in the most extreme cases, removal. Can you file an ethics complaint against somebody if they're no longer on the Board of Education? What do you think? What do you think? Yes,
Yes.
Lee's nodding yes, and the answer is yes. The only caveat is it's got to be within that 6-month limitation period, and of course, suspension or removal are not going to be an option in that particular case. I often get this question. I like to post on social media as a board member. I like to go on X and write letters to newspapers and all these things. Do I lose my First Amendment rights by virtue of being a Board of Education member? And the answer is, of course not, you don't. But there are certain limitations, right? We talked about having to provide accurate information. We talked about not undermining personnel. We have a policy, and not publicly criticizing staff. We have a policy, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's important that you know that if you do like to post about issues pertaining to the school district, for instance, where your affiliation with the board is going to be recognized, you have to make it very clear that you're speaking as an individual and that you're not speaking on behalf of the board. And the School Ethics Commission has this model disclaimer language, and I'm happy to email it to anybody that they like you to have in your post. And it says that the following statements made by me are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my personal opinions, just so that it's clear to the community that you're speaking as a citizen and that you're not speaking for the Board of Education. Okay, moving on. So every year, you know, I like to kind of take the latest and greatest from the School Ethics Commission, cases that have come out this past year, and kind of I'm not going to call on anybody, so you can just yell out your answer if you'd like, about whether you think these are true or false. So in this particular case, a board member was a member of UNICO. I'm not sure if you're familiar with UNICO. It's the Italian-American organization in town. And this board member was rather upset because the school choir had come to the UNICO Columbus Day event every year, and she finds out this year the chorus or choir is not coming to the UNICO Italian-American Columbus Day event. And so the board member then proceeds to text and email the teacher, the chorus teacher, kind of interrogating her as to why they weren't coming. The teacher responds, well, the principal made a decision this year that we weren't going to participate. And the board member proceeds to then kind of interrogate and chastise the teacher about the principal's directive. So you all have a copy of the Code of Ethics in front of you. Do you believe this violated Section D, not administering the schools, and Section E, recognizing your authority rests with the board and not taking private action that could compromise the board? Do you think this was a true or a false? What do you think? True? So I hear some trues, I hear some falses. It was a true. It was true. It was a violation. And so what the School Ethics Commission said was that if the respondent was unhappy with the principal's decision that the band and choir were unavailable to participate in the event, she should have addressed her concerns with the superintendent rather than questioning a teacher about the principal's reasoning for the decision. She put the teacher in a very untenable position. How about this one? A board member violated Section B and C of the Ethics Act. So this is the conflict section where it says you shouldn't participate in a manner where you have a privilege or advantage. So here there's a vacancy on the Board of Education. The board member's spouse applied for the vacant seat, and the board member decided to sit in on the deliberations and the interview of her own husband, which took place in closed session. Does anybody think that that was a violation, true or false? True. Does anybody think it was a false?
Is it the vote that she can't sit in? Like, is she allowed to sit on the discussion but not partake in the vote?
So she did both.
Okay.
She did both. And so I'll ask you that question. What do you think? So should she have maybe not participated in the discussion but could have participated in the vote? Yeah, so what the School Ethics Commission said was that she should not have sat in on the discussion, nor should she have participated in the vote on her husband. She could have voted for another candidate, for instance. She wasn't precluded entirely from the process, but she certainly couldn't vote for her husband. And what the Ethics Commission said, I'll just read you a quick quote, is that by attending the executive session while the board discussed her husband's potential appointment to the board, the respondent used her official position as a board member to secure the unwarranted advantage of hearing the board's private deliberations regarding her family member during the executive session. The spouse of the other immediate family members of the other candidates for the board were not permitted to attend the executive session and hear the private discussions. So respondent was only present due to her board member status. Additionally, respondent's mere presence in the exec session may have resulted in a chilling effect on the discussion and the selection process that ensued by the other non-conflicted members. So basically what they're saying is she should have stepped out and recused herself entirely from at least the discussion involving her husband. How about this one? A superintendent emails the entire board, very excited to tell the board that the NFL was going to possibly be using their stadium. A board member then takes that email and forwards it to the town council and the mayor. What do you think? Is that a violation of confidentiality? What do you think?
No.
I hear some trues, I hear some falses. The answer is true. It was a violation. And the keyboard, once again, does not want to cooperate with me. The answer is true. And they said that, look, this was still in the deliberative phases. It was not public information at that point in time, and therefore the board member had no business forwarding an email from the superintendent to the community. And so what I would say is if you ever get an email from Dr. Beck or Ms. Rossi or Ms. Black or anybody for that matter to the board, and there's ever a question about whether it's confidential, don't just flip it to the mayor and the council or anybody else for that matter. Better off asking the question. How about this one? This was an advisory opinion request. We get a lot of these issues about board members who are also teachers in other school districts. So if a board member is a teacher in another school district, can they participate in negotiations with the teachers in the board member's own district once there's a memorandum of agreement, which pretty much solidifies what the terms of the agreement are going to be, as well as the guides, which pretty much say where everybody's going to be placed? What do you think? Can a board member participate if they're a teacher in another district in the teacher negotiations in Sparta, for instance, once there's an MOA with the salary guides? What do you think? True or false?
True.
True. It was a true, and that's what the School Ethics Commission has said. Once we're on like the 1 yard line, basically, the contract's been pretty much solidified at that point in time. The board member who's a teacher in the other district can fully participate and vote on the final contract. A couple more. A board member violated Section C and E of the Ethics Act when she emailed vendors falsely claiming she was reaching out on behalf of the board and then requested price quotes for Chromebook devices. So in this case, the board's thinking about getting Chromebooks. They have some discussions at their finance committee meeting, and this board member then decides to start emailing all kinds of vendors. She contacts business administrators from neighboring districts asking about their experiences with Chromebooks and so forth. Do you think that that board member violated anything by doing that?
Yes.
True? What do you think? True? Absolutely. There was a true on that one. And what the Ethics Commission said was that the respondent did not have board approval to take such actions. Moreover, her action far exceeded preliminary internet searches or research. She conducted a detailed inquiry in which she contacted vendors and gave the impression that she was doing so on behalf of the board, which she did not have the authority to do. As such, the commission agrees that she violated Section C, and that should be the Code of Ethics, not the prohibited acts. We need some new batteries here or something. Thank you. How about this one? This was interesting. A board member whose spouse is a member of the Borough Council, would they violate Section C of the Ethics Act, which says board members shouldn't act in a manner where they have a direct or indirect personal or financial involvement? So do you think a board member would violate Section C of the Act if she were to vote on a shared services agreement between the board and the township for a school resource officer? So the town and the board were thinking about contracting for an SRO. The question was the board member's spouse was a council person. Should the board member have abstained on the SRO agreement? What do you think?
Yes.
True. It was absolutely something that they should have abstained on. And I've been asked, well, you know, there's no financial gain for the board member. What's the personal gain? It's really an SRO agreement. And what the Ethics Commission said was that it would undermine the public trust, essentially. The public would be wondering, is the board member really voting because they want this SRO agreement? Are they doing it to kind of make their husband look good, for instance? And what they said is, regardless of whether the board member and or his spouse may have an actual or only a perceived personal or financial involvement. In such matters, the board member's involvement could violate the public's confidence. Best that the board member abstain. How about this one? A board member violated sections A, D, and F of the code. A says you have to uphold all laws and rules. Section D is not administering the schools, and Section F is refusing to surrender your independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups. So did a board member violate this when 3 other board members as well voted no on a motion to approve the health and PE curriculum, resulting in a tie vote? And so when there's a tie vote, it doesn't carry, as you know. Thereby, the motion approving the curriculum failed, leaving the district out of compliance with the student learning standards. Do you think that that was a violation, voting no on the curriculum? What do you think? I thought this was an interesting one. True, false? What do you think? I hear a false, and you are correct, our student representative. Good job. It was a false. And what the Ethics Commission said was, look, voting on a motion is part and parcel of a board member's duties and responsibilities. It's not an activity or function that's borne by anyone other than the board and its individual members. And to show there's a violation of law, you actually have to prove that there was some court order in place, which there wasn't. So again, if you think about voting no on something being an ethics violation, there'd be a lot of board members around the state who vote no on lots of different things who would be found to be in violation of the act, which is obviously not the purpose. The problem here was they left the district out of compliance now with the curriculum needs, so they had to go back and rectify the situation and so forth. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a violation. So final question, I'm going to turn to Dr. Beck on this one. I'm going to call you out on this one, okay? True or false, Dr. Beck? A board member violated the code of ethics when he commented on his Facebook page, now if we could do something about the local terrorist that destroys dreams and burns futures, and then when you clicked on it, there was a link to the superintendent's picture. What do you think? Is that a problem, Dr. Beck? What do you think?
I would think that would be frowned upon, yes?
Yes, that would be highly frowned upon. That is the antithesis of supporting and protecting school personnel. Yes, you can't make this stuff up, right? Good job, everybody. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on. Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. In Sparta High School's first year competing in the Health Occupation Students of America, which is also known as HOSA, Northern Regional Conference in January, our first-year club competed against nearly 1,000 students from across the state. The following students qualified for the state-level conference for HOSA: Adrian Applebaum in dental science, Sailor Salvigson in nursing assistant, Alyssa Wainwright in sports medicine, Chris Munoz and Haley Erickson in CPR and first aid, and Gathri Nataraja, first place in extemporaneous writing and health policy. Congratulations to them. On this evening's agenda, you see many noteworthy, long-standing staff members who have submitted their retirements. I would like to draw attention to these retirees this evening. They are Catherine Cahan, who was an ELA teacher at Sparta Middle School and has served our district for 25 years. Patricia Curtis, band teacher at Helen Morgan School, has served our district for 37 years. Lillian Farrell, school nurse at Helen Morgan, served our district for 25 years. Victoria Lahamadou is a secretary at Sparta Middle School, has served our district for 27 years. And Teresa McMahon, fifth grade teacher at Helen Morgan, who has served our district for 25 years. Congratulations and thank you to those educators. Sparta Middle School's robotics team, 153D, took the Long Hill tournament with a first place win, guaranteeing their place at the VEX IQ State Championships on Sunday, March 10th at NJIT. And while we honored our Governor Educators of the Year this evening, we have another Educator of the Year, actually still present in the crowd. A few weeks ago, we received official notification that Eric Hood won the American Council of Teachers of Russian Award for teaching excellence in Russian at the 9 to 12 level for 2023. The American Council of Teachers of Russian is the national level organization for all teachers of Russian in the United States, and this is the most prestigious award and honor that 9 to 12 Russian language teachers can earn. Congratulations. And lastly, Parker kind of stole some of my thunder about the musical, but I'll plug it again. You can't plug it too much, right, Angela? I would like to promote this year's Sparta High School musical, which will be The Wizard of Oz. Showtimes are, again, March 1st and 2nd at 7 p.m. and March 3rd at 2 p.m. Ticket information can be found on the Sparta High School webpage under News and Announcements. Our Sparta Theater program always puts on a great production, and this year, I'm sure, will be no different. And off to Tara.
Okay, just two quick reminders. In an effort to continue to promote and value our community partnerships and the relationships that we share with our Sparta families, the Culture and Climate team that just presented to talk about the family survey that will be released on Monday through email. This is our second year of the partnership, and this is the second round of data collection that complements the internal data that was gathered from staff and student surveys in alignment with our district policy last year. Instructions and additional information along with a link will be provided. Again, that will go home on Monday the 26th, and it's open for 10 days. So your feedback matters greatly to us. It's really important for us to know what's working well so we can preserve those things. And of course, areas and opportunities for improvement, because that is ultimately what we're striving to achieve. In order for this data to be meaningful, reflective, and reliable, we do need about 1/3 of our family participation. So it's important. We're going to continue to promote it, but we do really feel that that feedback is valuable, and we want to make sure that it's also reliable. Separate from that, you see on the agenda tonight, we did receive the High Impact Tutoring Grant. It was a competitive grant, and we already started working with students who qualify for intervention services in math for grades 3 through 5. They've been invited to attend Mathnasium in the Sparta community, so that's also another great partnership with our local community partners and businesses. On March 1st, we are going to roll out something called Pear Deck Tutor, and that is for students in grades 6 through 12. They'll have access to that platform from March 1st. I don't know why I keep stumbling on that. March 1st of this year until the end of next year. So all our secondary students will have access to that platform. They'll be shown how to use that platform in math class. It's really intuitive and user-friendly, and there'll be more information sent home to families. While the purpose was to help with math support, you can use it for any level of support and for any content area. So it's versatile, it's easy to use, and we're excited to see how our students navigate that. So I just wanted to make you aware of some of those things and to look out for upcoming information on both. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, moving on, can I get a motion to approve the HIB report?
Motion.
Thank you. Second? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
No.
Mr.
This is different.
Just to be clear,
This is
this is
different.
not the same matter. This is just the monthly report.
Then I'm a yes. Thank you.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
You want to mention I'm going to do the other resolution?
No.
Okay.
You have any communications, Joanne?
None.
No, neither do I. Okay, delegate liaison reports.
So I just have one quick thing. I don't have anything for curriculum because Tara pretty much reported out a lot of our discussion items. But for the Sparta Education Foundation, there are still some tickets left for the food and wine pairing, which is on March 9th at the barn at Hillside Park. So there are a couple tickets left. I think it was under 20 last time I saw. So if you want to attend that event, get your ticket now. They are also looking for volunteers. If you want to help in that capacity, you can help as a volunteer. And tonight we are actually approving a grant on the agenda, so you actually get to see their hard work in action if you take a look at the agenda. So that's all that I have.
Thank you. Anybody else?
For town council, Kurt, Dr. Beck, Joanne, and I met twice with our town council delegates a few weeks back. We're very excited to be partnering with the township to explore feasible solutions to some of our district's most pressing areas, especially with a referendum on the horizon. We look forward to the continued collaboration with the town council, and we will keep the community informed with updates throughout.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just to add a little bit to what Tara was saying, although she covered it, I think the work that's going on with the Culture and Climate Committee and with the 3-year plan that we're in process, it's very, very exciting work. So even if you don't
fully understand what it might lead to. I think it's extremely valuable, and I'm really excited to see what work we can implement in the school to help bolster our climate and, foster good things in Sparta. Not that we don't already do that, but we could all use some improvement.
The next Garden State Coalition of Schools meeting is actually in person on March 20th at 9 a.m. They just had a really good meeting, really just having a roundtable of superintendents from around the state speaking to new Assembly Ed Committee members about some of the trying pieces of legislation, their impact right now. The feedback was very helpful. I'm happy to forward that on to the administration. But everything from trying to eliminate teacher residency requirements to looking at CUSAC. I mean, nothing was held back, and I think it was helpful. And one good takeaway that I did see was on, I believe that the Garden State Coalition will be part of the advisory feedback group for the, sorry, let me go down here, regarding the science of literacy, that package of bills. So Betsy Ginsburg, really Tara, I wanted to invite you to give feedback. She is looking for districts' feedback on how to make the bills better and less onerous, I'm not using the right word tonight, to districts as they look at a balanced literacy versus these new requirements. So would love to include your feedback there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to public comment number 1. Public comments are invited on all matters pertaining only to action items at this time. Please state the action item number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation, if appropriate, for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you've had your allotted 3 minutes to speak, you'll be not permitted to speak again until public comment number 2. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The Board of Administration may or not respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of public participation.
Tap into Sparta. I just had a couple quick questions. 15.31, policy 9191, referring to booster clubs. It took a long time to get PTOs to be included in that. I don't see language in I know it says not limited to, but would you consider adding PTOs into the language of the policy just to make it clear so that future PTOs understand that they can take advantage of some of the benefits of that policy? 17.7, oh no, I'm sorry, 17.6, SDA, NJ, DOE funding. Do we know what that's for? Can you tell us what projects will be funded by that? 17.9, the rec grant. Does that have anything to do, it's a DCA grant. Does that have anything to do with Jake's Law type of playgrounds? Is this a Green Acres type of a thing? Is it? I thought you were nodding. Okay. And then the 17.1, the demographic study. At the planning board last night, I mentioned that the district is about to undertake a demographic study. At the planning board, at the township level, we're doing a master plan review. I say we because I've been fortunate to be added to the committee, where the demographic information would be quite helpful. And so I suggested, and you may have somebody reach out to you from the township to see if there's any way to just make sure that anything you get might be helpful, that it could be collaborative to see what data points you're collecting, and maybe if there's additional funding needed, that could be something shared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for reminding me.
Anybody else? Motion to close.
Motion.
You, all in favor?
Aye.
Yep. I second that.
I'll respond to the first one, Jenny. Yeah, absolutely. We can look at adding the PTOs in there. They're a nonprofit entity, so I'll just discuss that with the committee. And then I'll jump to the last one, because I think the other two could be done by Ms. Black. But the demographic study, yeah, if we're going through it anyway, and there's any way that we can help the town and collaborate with the town on the demographic study, if there's information that they can use, absolutely. Yeah, as long as somebody reaches out, we can work through it together.
So the SDA funding grant, that is for capital and emergent needs, and we are still reviewing where we do want to spend the funding. We do have some ideas in mind, but a final determination has not been made yet. And then the rec grant, this is through the DCA, and it's funding that is available. And, as far as its improvement for playgrounds, that's what we are really looking for, to see if we can do some improvements at Helen Morgan School.
Okay, moving on to item 15, personnel and policy. Can I get a motion to move 15.1 to 15.36?
Motion.
Thank you. Second? Thank you. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Sealander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Okay, on to curriculum. Motion for 16.1 to 16.13.
Motion.
Thanks, Wendy. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky, sorry. Ms. McMichael?
That's a first.
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes to everything except for 16.9, which I abstain. It's because my wife's on the SEF board.
Ms. Sealander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Motion for finance, 17.1 to 17.11.
Motion.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Sealander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Motion for item 18, operations.
Motion.
Thank you. Dawn. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Sealander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Okay, item 19, old business. Does anyone on the board have anything old business?
I do. I'd like to make a motion to reinstate the original transgender policy with discussion, please.
Okay, go ahead.
We need a second.
Second, sorry.
Second.
Thank you, Jen. Discussion.
I have
Go
something
ahead,
prepared, if you don't mind. I'll be fast. Just to catch the public up to speed, I conveyed to my fellow board members my intentions to bring forth this motion this evening. This is not a surprise. This was discussed in both policy and finance committee meetings, and I'd like to share some background. Chad and I had the pleasure of attending our Governance One training back in January. We met with countless higher-ups from the NJSBA and had the opportunity to personally discuss with them a number of issues facing our district and many others. The recommendations from the NJSBA when it comes to the transgender policy are abundantly and consistently clear. Quote, "You're either actively avoiding litigation with the Attorney General with this policy, or you're unnecessarily inviting it." This is what one of the 3 in-house attorneys I spoke with advised. She went on to say, "It sounds like Sparta has not only invited the attention of the Attorney General, he should be knocking on your door any day now. Leave the original policy alone until it's all over." I could not agree with her more. Similarly, Attorney David Rubin, who represents many districts across the state, put out a press release on behalf of the NJSBA entitled "Legally Speaking, Transgender Students and Parental Notification, What Path Forward?" which I do encourage everyone to read. Option number 2 is entitled "Revise Your Policy to Provide Greater Parental Notification" and discusses the several risks associated with changing the policy. First, the chance that some transgender students may will suffer psychological harm or worse. And second, the chance that the Attorney General will bring legal action against your district with all expense and inconvenience that would entail. You should first consult with legal counsel to satisfy yourself there is a plausible legal argument standing a chance of prevailing in court, end quote. Mark did advise in our policy committee meeting, he is confident our revised policy could withstand a legal challenge in court. But it's Mr. Rubin's next line that is more concerning for me. You should then commit the financial resources necessary to withstand the litigation that may ensue, even if it requires multiple levels of appeals, and be transparent with your community about where you stand and why, end quote. This line haunts me because we have not designated any funds for this, and with barely $500,000 in our maintenance reserves, I'm not sure why we would even want to. I would like to emphasize some of Mark's important points that may not have been reflected in the finance meeting minutes especially. First, the notion that our district's insurance would simply foot the bill for all litigation costs is misinformed. Mark confirmed that in the very least between our deductible and additional legal expenses that would not be covered, a legal challenge as a result of this policy revision would not be at zero cost to our district. Mark advised the current policy might not be challenged by the Attorney General, especially given how quickly the 3 other districts were sued for revising theirs. But we should remember, we did not simply revise our policy the way that the other 3 districts did. We abolished and then adopted a revised version of another district's policy, and catching that might take some time. However, Mark did confirm that under our current policy, the department absolutely may still sue our district. I also presented data that showed our district is now within the highest percentile range of comparable districts in the state when it comes to our legal spending. I'll provide that resource for the good of the order. And while there are many factors that do contribute to that, according to Mark, the policy revisions over the past year by this board, including this policy, have contributed to our inflating legal costs. If the current policy increases our chances of being sued by the Attorney General, we can't obviously equate how much. We can't quantify that percentage, but by any percent, we can't afford it. And frankly, Sparta taxpayers do not want to foot the bill for this. Let's take our newly revised policy for the sake of the collaboration that was met, put it to the side, and wait however long for the case law to trickle down. That might take months or years, and we can revisit that discussion then, knowing, again, that it might take several months or years. But until then, let's remove Sparta from this contentious equation. Let's remove any emotional or political ties to this discussion and focus solely on the liability for our district. We should be laser focused on the issues legitimately affecting Sparta students and Sparta schools and make sure all of our resources are allocated to those instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. I'll just comment on that as well. Okay. It's my opinion, being what we did, if anyone were to knock on our door, someone would have knocked months ago. It's not like we're a hidden little town. We're all over social media. Everyone knows what we're doing when we're doing it. With legal expenses in reference to policies and our high costs for legal with reference to policies, the policies are being changed, updated regularly. It's not just us, it's the state, and he does review them. It does cost things to review the policies. I feel confident if anything were to happen, we'd win in court. I don't think we'll ever be in court, but to have a slush fund of money set away just to be sued, it's not necessary. I mean, if that's the case, let's have one for me sitting here, because I'm sued regularly. So with that, I'm very confident with the policy we created as a team and worked together. And even though I'm against having the policy altogether, everyone who worked on it worked tirelessly, and I think it's good and sound.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on a few points as well. I do firmly believe, just so there's no ambiguity about what I said, I do firmly believe that our policy would withstand any legal challenge that were brought against us. Our policy is different than some of the other policies that are currently being litigated right now. We don't need to go into all the differences, but I do believe our policy would withstand legal scrutiny. That's number one. I absolutely agree with Mr. Morris. I think if the Attorney General's office was going to bring a legal action, they would have done it. The way that typically happens is through an emergent relief proceeding, I should say. In the other districts that were sued, it was literally days after they adopted their policies on second reading that we received legal challenge to those. So that was the second point. And then the third point is this motion tonight would require 2 readings to abolish a policy, as you all know. So I just wanted to remind everybody, if we do adopt it, it's going to have to come back for another reading.
Any other discussion?
I wanted to just say that I feel like, given the really great, insightful questions so far that have been asked about our financial situation in all of the committee meetings I've attended, which is 2, and even just having had them at the table about the school and about like anything that pertains, we talk a lot about waiting on state funding, comes up a lot, like we don't have those numbers yet. And we are always waiting on numbers because we don't have a lot to work with and we have a lot to support. And to me, I guess I just feel like, and I had expressed this previously before being on the board, but there was nothing really truly, there was nothing risky about the original policy to begin with, and there was never any issue brought about by anybody in the community. There was never any risk of litigation with the original policy, and never any even discussion about it being an issue in any way, shape, or form. So just the idea that there's a risk makes no sense to me as anybody that's trying to better the financial situation of Sparta. That's the way I'm looking at it, just strictly by the numbers. So I feel like this vote, or whatever this discussion, I would love to hear other board members how they feel about whether or not I feel like the responsible thing to do is to either go back or to either create a giant slush fund, if you want to use that term, of money to protect us from that. And right now, it just doesn't seem like we can do that. So I'd be curious to hear what other board members, how they feel about which way to go, because that seems like the 2 options to be the safest that we can.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I think there, a lot of, kind of echoing what Kurt said, there was a lot of work and a lot of thought that went into this policy. And I think if we feel that there are holes in this policy, then we should look at the current policy and work on that, and work to update the policy if we do feel there are holes. I think in general, the risk of a lawsuit, I think that could be said for any of our policies. I think there are a lot of policies that are out of date, right? And we've talked a few times in the past year about a total policy review, because a lot of our policies are out of date and could leave us open to a lot of risks. But at least my opinion is, if we do feel like there are holes, let's look at the policy, the updated policy, and let's work off of that.
So to that point, I, for the sake of time, didn't want to go into the minutia that came up during the policy meeting, but there were specific lines that did arguably contradict some of the requirements as set forth in NJ-LAD. One of them, for example, was the requirement that the counselor balances the rights of the student, I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, and the essential obligation or responsibility to notify the parent, or the parent's right to know. And unfortunately, that's not what the law says. So while I understand Mark's point, and this is what we I have to say candidly and kindly discussed, and I appreciate that, I think the question is not whether or not it would withstand in court, which I'm sure you would feel confident in arguing that it would. It's why we're in the courtroom. And I think that's the question that I don't have an answer to yet, and I'm trying to understand why that is. We know this is a contentious topic. I understand your point. There are many policies that need to be revised. There's no doubt about that. I don't understand why we picked this one. And unfortunately, in the climate we're in right now, where this is an ongoing, super contentious policy across the state, I just think it serves us financially to remove ourselves from that equation and revisit it when there's actual case law to tell us, yes, this policy is perfectly sound. And there we go, we reinstate it then. Like I said, I would appreciate some, I don't know, a specific reason, or, again, I even said this in policy, what prompted the change? Were there incidents, were there reports, were there issues with parents coming out, by the dozen saying this is a huge issue in our district and we need to update this policy? I don't believe that data is there. And I know that the argument came up of, well, a parent can sue us, and it's like, that's true, and there is, one parent suing many, many people involving a similar issue, but that can happen with any policy at any time. So I just look at it like the onus is more on us not to prevent or predict parental lawsuits, but to make sure that we're in compliance and we're not welcoming the unwarranted attention of the Attorney General, and especially when the NJSBA recommendations are consistent and clear, and the recommendation is just leave it, just wait. I don't understand why legally and financially we're willing to put ourselves in that risk, even if it's 5%. Why? And that's my question, so I appreciate it, though.
Thank you. Lauren?
So I just wanted to share something that I shared with the members of the board here is, and I thank you, Caitlin, for bringing it to our attention that, we do strive to have no surprises at the table. So thank you so much for that advance on this. And so in advance of that, I also it prompted me to think, you mentioned in committee about the audit report and looking at where the money is going. And as we saw those large categories, the majority of our money is being spent as it should be, right, on student instruction, on special ed instruction, on making sure we're paying our staff accordingly and competitively, and then also looking at general administration as that fifth category. That's where legal services falls, right? So of a $81 million budget in our audit, we were looking at like a $5.1 million piece of the pie, vast smaller than the rest of it. Now, if you look at an entire budget and you look at what I had the auditor pull was, let's compare legal services from 2018 through 2023, similar to kind of what you were comparing against legal expenses, right? So I wanted to see what's the comparison really for our district. Because there's a lot of factors at play when we look at legal, right? We're looking at, it's not just looking at policy review, there's a number of things, right? Where, as I reflected in the minutes, it can be anything from, OPRA requests and special education, personnel labor issues. So when we're looking at the data over those years, you'll notice that in 2022, the legal expenses represented 0.4% of our total budget for that year. In 2023, that was down to 0.25%. So we're talking about 0.25% of our total budget is what we're spending on legal expenses. And that's even including, understandably that even when there may have been transfers to increase that budget line, we're also talking about, that's including, as noted on here, that there was a judgment against the district that was paid out. So we do budget a certain amount. There is budget within legal. We do take our counsel very seriously. I mean, I appreciate that you took advantage of all the opportunities at NJSBA at their training. I guess I'm just surprised in a Gov 1 training that's how the time would be utilized personally, because there's so much information to take in as a first-year board member of all the things. I guess I'm a little shocked that that's, just being transparent with you, that's how the time was being spent, because those attorneys, if that is how they were advising, I would argue that that's not staying in their lane, because we have a board attorney who knows our district and we are a policymaking body. I respectfully do disagree with you, Jen, that I think it did put us at risk, because this was boards across the state passed this policy with very good intentions, with Strauss-Esme marking it as mandatory, and it wasn't mandatory. There were people at the time that thought, well, gee, what does it mean to have the school's under no obligation to notify parents? What does that mean? Does that mean we never notify? Does that mean we keep a separate document? Like, what does that mean? I mean, you wanted to go into some specifics, so I am sharing that. So at the end of the day, what we worked to achieve collaboratively as this board was balancing those needs within the policy, and I think we did do that well. Not that we can't ever go back to it, but I think it is balanced. It's balancing the needs of our staff and students and parents, because parents cannot be left out of this equation. We're bringing a survey with climate and culture. They are part of the equation. And this policy is not cast from state law. It explicitly leaves them out. And you and I might have very different opinions on that, but at the end of the day, the far majority of best support is coming from home. Like, that's what supports students. We hug them around with all the great supports of our amazing staff, our amazing clinicians, and it's nothing against any of the supports we're giving in school. But simply to say that there's a lot at play within that policy, and we really tried to be very nuanced with it, and understanding the population, and understanding some really difficult needs, but also not leaving parents out, not keeping secrets when we can help to bridge a family back together that needs to support their student. And sometimes that's not possible. And that's also reflected in the policy. Sometimes that's not possible. So it's not an automatically tell. That's not what it is. So I'm over speaking, but I just wanted to bring to the point that when we're looking at budget, our district is not hemorrhaging from legal fees. We're talking about 1/4%. We're talking about 1/4% of a total budget.
I
So
just
that's what
want to
I'd
make
say.
sure that we're very clear on a few things, and I'm going to give everyone else the time, and I'll make sure I stop here. So it's important to note that when something like 75 to 80% of our budget is wrapped up in salaries and going to the appropriate locations, that makes the 25% that much more important, because that's what we actually do have the jurisdiction over. So when you say half of 1%, that's actually sizable. And ironically, what you just handed out kind of contradicts what you're saying, at least from the 2022-2023 perspective, where when we see salaries for $269,000 at 30%, legal services are at $222,000 at 25%.
This is just within the
I
general,
understand.
I'm
This-
sorry to
this
interrupt,
is-
but that's just within the general administration.
I
There's a full
understand,
different
but the point
account
is,
for that.
right, legal services are broken down, and that's not even including judgments against the school district for 11%. And this also shows consistently that the bars are going up in terms of what we are expending in terms of legal services. I think this is a discussion more for finance, where it was. The point I was raising that was specific to the transgender policy was the point that Mark confirmed in finance. When I asked explicitly, outside of district lawsuits, litigation, your average run-of-the-mill issues, Oprah results, outside of that, would you say in the last year that the incessant policy changes have resulted in the increase in our legal fees? And his answer was yes. So that's something that we can't deny or try to hide. I think it's important that we are going, just like the NJSBA rep Rubin said, if you're going to do it, that's fine, but be transparent with the community that this is why you're willing to die on that hill. And I feel like right now, and I will be very blunt with you as well, I felt the same way about the book policy. I'm not bringing that up tonight because we're not in jeopardy of litigation over the book policy, as much as I don't think anything warranted that. I'm talking about what's going to get us potentially sued, and I'm trying to protect our assets as limited as they are. And just one last thing, just to clear your mind, there were open tables for different reps. I also spoke with the business administrator who pointed me to the resource that told me why we're, 68 out of 74 districts, 68th highest in our 8A legal services only expenditures compared to only comparable districts of our size and of our status. So again, the notion that we're just asking exclusively about the transgender policy, there were people who spent their lunch asking about, can I post this on social media? Can I still be part of this political group? They had every right to do that. That was the whole point of the training. But any notion that that was what was, Chad and I utilized every opportunity available to us, lunch, breakfast, and dinner, to talk to everyone we possibly could about a wide range of issues. And not just issues, positivity too. So I would just really encourage any notion of that is kind of insulting, but it's okay. I know you didn't necessarily mean it that way, but I don't think they were outside of their bounds. I think they were advising everyone based on what's trending in our state. And unfortunately, this is a policy that's trending in our state, and I still have yet to hear why we're willing to go to bat for it legally. So.
Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, two things. I also appreciate the work that goes into rebuilding a policy the way that the board at the time wanted it to look. Like that, nobody's disrespecting any work that's done behind the scenes. Board members work on stuff all the time. A lot of you worked through 2-3 years of a budget behind the scenes that people don't even see how many hours you work on that budget, and they still don't really see the work that you've done, right? Nobody's discounting any of the work that's been done. Literally, the idea of the motion, I think, is to put that work aside until it's a better time to introduce that work and it feels like it's safer. Here's the bottom line, before we do vote, if we're voting on a motion, there was one version of the policy that never had a chance of getting us sued. and never put us at any financial risk. And there's one that does. That's it. We are in a situation where we are going into budget months where we have to be careful. That's it. That, aside from whatever we're looking at, if we're looking at what is best financially for Sparta, it just seems like the safest bet. That's all.
Anybody else? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to reinstate the old 5756. And abolish the current. Joanne, could I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Collier?
No.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
No.
Mr. Pleshy?
No.
Ms. Seelander?
No.
Dr. Serrano?
No.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
No. Okay, the motion does not pass. That was old business, right? Yeah. All right, new business.
I have something.
You have something to do? No, oh, okay. You want to?
Yes, we have a resolution for the board's consideration. Resolved that the board affirms the HIB specialist decision in case number HMS 112023001, heard during this evening's executive session, and be it further resolved that the parents shall be provided with a written decision along with information on their right of appeal to the Commissioner of Education.
Can I have a motion to affirm the decision?
Motion.
Thanks, Craig. Second?
Second.
Thank Wendy. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Abstain.
Ms. Gagnon?
Yes.
Ms. Lonsky?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
No.
Mr. Pleshy?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Okay, anybody else have anything for new business? Okay, moving on to second public comment. Children. Sorry for the interruption. The board uses second public comment period to invite comments on all matters pertaining to the school district. Please state your name, municipality, and group affiliation if appropriate. For the record, each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. Once you have had your allotted 3 minutes to speak, you will not be permitted to speak again. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board and administration may or may not respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of public participation. Sir?
Dr. Joshua Torres. Sparta, and I'm here on myself.
Thank you.
It's specific to something actually said today about what your policy is. I actually followed your policy on who to report to, and I went to the chief administrator. I called, wished to speak with him, and he refused to schedule a meeting with me. Called several times, left several messages, and left opportunities. Here's my calendar. Here's all the time that I have available. You can call me at any of those moments. Did he call? True or false? No. He called times that were outside of the window that was given. What am I talking about? In October of 2023, I called specifically about changing a bus route. I was told I had to do it in writing, so I obliged. I did it in writing, sent it to the transportation person. A week later, the transportation person sent me an email, which was just a standard reply. Our policy is 2 point whatever it is. However, what was not taken into consideration is that they made 2 bus stops out of 1 location. Instead of consolidating where there was 10 children who live in that area, who will use all of these buses, all 5 buses come to that one spot. And instead, they separated them and sending 2 to one, and then the other 3 stayed in one area. And so I sent the email. I replied. They said, no, we've considered that. It has to be a commuter stop. And I said, it is a commuter stop. And they go, well, this is really our policy, 2.5, whatever it may be. And then I said, well, when would be the next time for consideration? No reply to that email. I let it go. Then 2 weeks later, the bus didn't show up. I called and I said, hey, the bus isn't here. Or I sent an email, bus didn't come this morning, will it come later on? They replied, the bus did come and the bus will be there. Problem was, the bus didn't come. And so I had to send the video from my Ring camera and ask for the GPS information proving that the bus came. Did the bus come? True or false? It did not come. And so they then had to report back going, oh, the bus driver apologized, the bus people apologized, but did your supervisor apologize? No. When the original one came out saying, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, basically. The bus came when it didn't. Second time when I've asked someone to think about something and they chose not to do it. And so then I reported to Dr. Beck's office, and the secretary doesn't schedule his appointments. He only schedules his appointments. And so, did he call back? Yes. During the times that I gave him? No. When I asked specifically, why can't we schedule a time? It's best for you to send it via email. So I sent him the list, all of the threads. And did he reply back to all of the threads 4 months later? No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Still no answer.
Doesn't move. Okay. Autumn McCourt, Sparta resident. I am here to talk about Thomas Murray. And as some of you know, Thomas Murray holds his chess club in our Sparta schools. He has his chess club in the mornings and in the afternoons at every single one of our Sparta schools. Well, this year, my 6-year-old son, who's in 1st grade, was very excited to do chess club. And he started doing it, and then on January 31st, he came home from school, and as soon as he got off the bus, he jumped into my husband's arms bawling. Here, that morning at chess club at Alpine, the chess coach, Mr. Murray, called him a jerk and made a comment about kicking him out of chess club. I, of course, called the principal, who told me that he had no control over him because he was a volunteer, and that conversation went on for a while in which he, agreed that something should be done. And then I called another parent I knew to verify what my son had said. And she talked to her daughter, who attends chess club, and she said, yes, he called him a jerk. Her daughter said he called him a jerk and that my son was doing nothing wrong. And other people have verified that he was doing nothing wrong. But then she also told me that several weeks before, her daughter came home upset about chess club. And when she asked her why, she said, oh, because Mr. Murray made a comment about it's raining stupid in here today. So I talked to my son about this comment, and I said, what happened? And he said, well, somebody was trying to figure out their move. Another 6-year-old was trying to figure out their move, and Mr. Murray's comment was, wow, it's really raining stupid in here today. And I said, well, how did that make you feel? And he said, terrible. So I contacted a bunch of people. As you all know, I contacted all of you and Mr. Beck, and, I got the same thing. He's a volunteer. There's nothing we can do. In fact, Mr. Beck said Mr. Murray was made aware of this complaint, and if these complaints were to be true and were to continue, he will no longer be allowed to use the district's facilities for his club. When I responded that they are true, he admitted to me that he said this to my son. As a matter of fact, he called me. He was unapologetic, blamed my son, and we all know, as of today, I know there's a video, and my son was not misbehaving. And then when I asked him about the comment about it's raining stupid, he said, so what's your point? And I said, well, my point is you shouldn't talk to 6-year-olds like that. It's incredibly damaging, and if that's how you're going to talk to children, you shouldn't be in charge of any children. And then to that, Mr. Morris's response to my email was, like I already stated, this is not a board matter and will not be addressed by the board.
He continued, "At this time, I respectfully ask that you stop emailing the Board of Education and let us handle matters that are actually board and district related." Well, I think that this is an issue that the board and every one of us should be concerned about. And after being told several times I was the only one complaining, I thought this is not possible. So I went on Facebook and I asked people, "Hey, have you had any issues with this guy?" And I got a lot of responses from people,
Thank you.
which
Thank
I'll
you.
share with you next time.
Is there anybody else?
I'll do a positive one.
Okay.
Late, guys, it's past my bedtime.
Are we ready?
Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Angela DeLucia, and I am the very proud president of the Sparta Education Association. As I've shared with you in the last few months, our everyday work and our after-school sports and activities are a great source of pride for every single one of our members, with our educators and paras working directly with students, and the support of our secretaries, IT, and security guards. The success of our students is always our priority. At Alpine, we have 2 author visits scheduled in the library in this coming month. One with a local author to celebrate Dental Hygiene Month, make sure you floss, for first grade, and the other is a grand celebration for the Love of Reading Week in the first week of March, where many of you sitting at this table and other literacy-loving faculty members like myself will serve as a guest reader for grades P through 2. Our elementary educators just participated in a wildly successful Harlem Wizards basketball event that brought hundreds of spectators to raise money for our schools. Mohawk Avenue School is partnering with Oscar and incorporating animal rescue lessons into their culture and climate work. Helen Morgan School is getting ready for their annual spaghetti dinner on March 13th, always a very fun and well-attended event. Also, with the addition of the pre-K class at Helen Morgan, our 5th grade classes have really stepped up as student leaders, and with the guidance of their amazing teachers are now serving as one-to-one mentors for pre-K students. At SMS, the basketball teams are advancing to championship rounds, and archery is off to an amazing start in competition. At the high school, as Dr. Beck mentioned, Eric Hood has been named the American Council of Teachers of Russian Teacher of the Year. This is the 2nd year in a row that a Sparta Russian educator has won this award. And also, as a personal plug, we hope that you will follow us down the Yellow Brick Road next week when the curtain opens on March 1st for The Wizard of Oz. Finally, it's an honor to represent such a strong, dedicated, and invested group of educators and support professionals, but tonight is always extra special as the Governor's Educators of the Year are recognized from each of our 5 buildings. I am sure we are all in agreement that we are very much looking forward to spring, which will bring us many more academic achievements, activities, and athletics to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny Derricks, 27 Mount Pleasant Road. I'm speaking as a resident and a former board member. I've come to understand that it's possible that sometimes committee meetings, even though it's not an emergency, committee meetings are still being held via Zoom or possibly held via Zoom. And I would just suggest that you reconsider that. It may be more convenient, but you're opening yourself up for some possibly unintended consequences, including possible OPMA violations of having a quorum. There might be someone off camera. We all know that will be revealed at some point. Somebody's going to rat you out. And then the other unintended consequences, for years, people off and on have asked to have access to committee meetings. And the comment from the board, rightfully so, has been committee meetings are closed to the public intentionally, so board members feel free to speak their mind, to be able to collaborate, and also talk freely. And if you are on Zoom, the rest of the people on the other side of the Zoom don't know who's out of camera range. So that then negates any time that somebody comes to the microphone and says, I want to go to a committee meeting. You've kind of lost that ability to say our meetings are closed when they're on Zoom and you don't know who's in the room. Just something to consider.
Anybody else from the public? Motion to close public comment?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will comment to Jenny. Yes, we do have our meetings via Zoom from time to time. We do have it in person from time to time as well. It all depends on the month. I do have faith in my entire board that they will not violate any violations. If they do, obviously, there's consequences. So I do have faith in the board that if we do at that time have Zoom meetings, I'm not worried about anyone, special guests, what have you. But I do understand what you're saying. To the chess club, once again, I'll reiterate, this has nothing to do with the district. Mr. Murray is not a staff member. He's strictly a volunteer that uses space within our school, just like many other organizations. You say there's multiple complaints. We don't feel complaints over social media. You can give us hundreds and hundreds of pages from social media. They mean nothing to us. So until some other people send emails and complain, which we have not received any, I don't know what to tell you. This has nothing to do with us. I'm sorry we can't help you. If you don't like them, you can pull your kid from the chess club. That's all I can tell you. Moving on. Go to the order.
I actually have two things. Firstly, just to comment on your point a little bit, but no, we actually, compared to some other board members, I would say that Caitlin, Jen, and I actually got super great training before we attended the training session. So when we were sitting in some of our conferences, there were definitely some instances where I'm sitting through things and I'm thinking, okay, I definitely already got this from the people that trained me. And also Joanne did a great job. So just to let everyone know, Sparta does a really good job with our board members, which is nice to hear. But I also wanted to follow up on some communication I had with Dr. Beck following my January board meeting training weekend. And some things that I picked up upon were how districts are supposed to have things like a mission statement, a vision statement, specific district, superintendent, and board goals, and for a strategic plan to be followed. We do have a mission statement that predates Dr. Beck, and we do not have a vision statement. We do have a recent strategic plan from the 2021-2022 school year. And it has been created and aligned district and superintendent goals. We can see that even today with our culture and climate moving forward with it. This is our second year. But our board hasn't set official goals since the arrival of Dr. Beck. And I think it would be a smart step to move quickly in establishing some goals for ourselves, especially from the view of a community member. Having established transparent goals for ourselves is important. I sent Dr. Beck and Mr. Morris an email, and Mr. Morris gave me the info that we have a strategic planning ad hoc committee that could help us achieve these goals. So I'm excited for Mr. Morris to help us make that happen. I just wanted to let you all know.
Anybody else?
I have a few things. Chad, I look forward to working on that with you and the rest of the board. I think it's really important that we set measurable goals for ourselves, to hold ourselves accountable, and also to make sure we're communicating to the public so the public knows what our goals are and what our intentions are in our roles. I'd also like to recognize Black History Month. It's been really nice seeing some of the projects coming home, especially homework for my boys. Just to circle back to the legal spending discussion, just to share the resource that with interested constituents that was provided to me from the NJSBA in-house business administrator. If you visit the DOE website, you go to the A to Z tab, you go to finance, you can go to the Taxpayer's Guide to Education Spending, and when you visit Indicator 8A, which is legal services, this is where I collected the data that I presented during finance and policy meetings, and it was very interesting and enlightening to see where we're at in terms of what we project for budgets and what our actual spending is in those areas, especially compared to districts our size. I'd like to acknowledge the 5 donors on tonight's agenda, particularly Thor Labs for contributing to our middle school robotics club, and the United Methodist Church for tackling eligible student lunch balances. I just think those are some really incredible gestures. And while I'm very sad to see a few of the names, all of the names, but especially a few personal ones on the resignation and retirement list, of course, we all wish our teachers and staff the very best in their retirement and thank them for their unparalleled dedication to our district. Thank you.
Anybody else? No, motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thanks, Craig. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.